Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to be talking about when people regret the chances they didn't take and the people they didn't sleep with. And this runs a little bit counter to, we have a fairly puritanical culture about sex, and really the only regrets that people tend to verbalize publicly are those where, especially a woman says, I hooked up with too many boys, or I wish I didn't have X or Y experience. That's fine, and I understand and validate that. However, people just as often have the other regrets, the opposite, about people they didn't sleep with and relationships they didn't choose to try. And I'll talk about that today, right as soon as I encourage you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was When Child-Centered Marriages Work, which is something I don't usually, talk about because enough people are on the side of child-centered marriages that there needs to be a voice in the wilderness. But sometimes they can work, and I talk about why and under what circumstances. I also have There is no way to be a loving husband without doing chores, when your rigidity is harming your relationship with your husband and kids, when you have implicit rules about what you can and can't share in couples therapy. Why would your partner try to make you happy if you never act happy? Those are my most recent subscriber episodes, so you should definitely, I think it is worth the $5.99 a month to subscribe and hear those and 100 more. All right, so for today, I told you at some point that I had a young male listener who said maybe I should do more stuff for single male listeners. Well, this is for single people of both genders. I do try to do that more of my social media, a lot of talking about like what compatibility is and not to settle and what to look for in a partner. If you look at my Instagram and my Facebook, I have a lot of stuff about that. Of course, the majority of people I work with are married and are, some of them are divorced, so this is applicable to them. But generally, they are people who, struggle with regrets because human beings have regrets. And sometimes I do hear about regrets of relationships people didn't want to be in and thinking like, oh, that ex-boyfriend was bad for me or that ex-girlfriend didn't treat me very well. But, honestly, more often than that, I hear I should have taken this chance. I should have tried to date this person. I should have slept with that girl who wanted to. I should have slept with that guy who wanted to. People tend to regret the chances they didn't take more than things that they did. And of course, there can be things people regret that they did too. Nothing here is black and white. But really, it seems like people, when they're older, so in midlife and afterwards, they tend to regret not putting themselves out there more and not trying harder to kind of take all that life had to offer and not doing so out of fear. And I just read not an article about this. It was a short essay in a book that my husband bought me. It was something here. Wait, I'll actually get you the title. The book is Wanting, Women Writing About Desire, and it's an essay collection. And so one of the essays in it that I just read was called The Good Girl, I think, and it was about a woman who regrets that she did not go further sexually as a teenager with a boy that she was very attracted to because she was abiding by the rules of her culture, and she wanted to be a good girl, and she's since repudiated many of those cultural norms, and she wishes in retrospect that, she had at that moment when she felt so attracted to that boy, had a sexual experience with him and gone further than she allowed herself to go because she was being guided by the principles that she was raised by, and she didn't want to be bad. And she wishes that she would have had that experience. And it also reminds me, some of you have read the book A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. That was a book that I've read a lot and that I liked. I grew up in Brooklyn. And in one of the scenes later on, when the main character, Francie, the young girl that it follows as she gets older, as a teenager, or I think she was like a late teenager or early 20s. She had an interaction with a guy, and she didn't have sex with him, and that it turns out that he was in fact married. And she said to her mother, so kind of like, should I have done it? And the mother said, well, I'm not going to say that, that you shouldn't have. I'm not going to, because it might have been wonderful. And it probably would have been wonderful because you were so in love with him to have that one interaction. And I think then the boy went away, the man, whatever, went away and was, in combat or what have you. This was set a long time ago, obviously. But anyway, the mother said you should have basically had the interaction. You should have slept with him because it would have been so wonderful because you were so young and so in love. And I remember reading that when I was younger and thinking that was really interesting, and it was like kind of a moment. I was a highly sensitive child, right? I mean, I'm sure you could imagine as a therapist now. And so I was always looking for guideposts about the way that male-female relationships would operate, much in the way that I do currently. And that was real interesting to me because as a girl, as the other essay that I just talked about delineates, when you're a girl, you are told to be a good girl. And you are told to basically avoid being bad and overly sexual and slutty and whatever. And that was a different way of thinking about it. And I read that book when I was an adolescent. So it was interesting that there could be this counter narrative that you should take whatever life has to offer you in terms of full sexual and romantic pleasure and enjoyment, and that could be even more important than doing the, quote, right thing. And here it wasn't only having sex out of wedlock. It was also, I remember the man had like a fiance that she found out about later or whatever. So she would have been doing something bad in that regard, but she also would have been doing something bad in as much as they themselves were not married, of course. And yet the mother thought that the experience might have been worth it. So anyway, how that relates is I frequently hear people that regret the chances that they didn't take romantically. And instead they waited and they tried to have few sexual partners or no sexual partners, or maybe they even waited till marriage. I see a lot of people who struggle with sexual issues that waited until marriage. And, they didn't get these experiences when they were young and in love and super obsessed with somebody that could have been amazing to look back at and amazing in the moment. And so if you are somebody who right now, so there's two kinds of people or many kinds of people that this relates to in so many different ways. But one thing is like parents now, as I've discussed ad nauseum, are very, very child-centered and sometimes over-anxious and over-vigilant about even young adults, their young adult children. And they'll get really up in arms about whether their children are having, sexual experiences or sleeping with too many people or whatever. I mean, what about the other alternative, which is that they would be scared of the world and terrified to interact with people? I mean, you wouldn't want that. There is a way to say, all right, good. Like, let my kid do whatever they want. Let them enjoy their life. Like, let them enjoy college. Let them have fun, of course, within safe limits and, discuss safe sex and whatever. But I talked about this in a podcast way early on about how do you teach your daughters about sex without pushing a fear narrative? And a lot of parents push a fear narrative because they were raised with a fear narrative. And the fear narrative took a lot away from them. It stole a lot of potential positive experiences that they could have had in the world. And this is applicable to even what I posted recently on social media about the general social survey says that rates of sexlessness are going up. And something like 30% of young people haven't had sex in the past year or something is crazy, and that isn't good. It's not like those people are happy. They're not like, wow, like I'm doing so great. And maybe some of them are, but I see other ones because I still do have some young clients and they're not happy about that, as you may not have been, particularly if you're somebody who currently likes to listen to Dr. Psych Mom talk about sex and how to have better sex in your marriage, then you may also be somebody who wishes that they would have had more sexual experience, So don't let your judgment stop you from encouraging your children to explore and to do whatever they want. And then, of course, many of you are single and post-divorce, and sometimes people kind of go back to this old way of thinking when they were single for the first time in their 20s, even though they're in their 40s, and they say, oh, I shouldn't, sleep with too many people, or then I'll be thought of this way or that way, or who cares? Who cares? I mean, if you are in a relationship, or not even a relationship, if you meet somebody that you have a click with and that you are really attracted to, why not see where that goes? So many people have all these rules and restrictions on when they'll allow themselves to be sexual with somebody. Particularly women have these rules because society trains women to try not to be, quote, slutty or whatever. And then, like, so many times they say, God, I wish I would have slept with that guy that was a summer fling when I was 18 years old. Or I wish that I would have allowed myself to more freedom to explore. Maybe then I would be more sex positive now, or I wouldn't be having these issues within my marriage where it's hard for me to open up. And men in particular really hate being late bloomers. I have a whole podcast about late bloomers and a post, and that got me a lot of feedback. A lot of people wrote in and emailed and said that podcast and post resonated with them about being a late bloomer. And some of those guys are not, it's not like every teenage guy is just like trying to have sex as hard as they can, like with, as trying as hard as they can to have sex with all these women, and they're just getting shot down and shot down. Some of them have internalized these rules about, again, not being bad or not having premarital sex or overly thinking of women as fragile and easily hurt. So then they take this more white knight role, or what I call a gentleman eunuch, and so they don't even try to have sex with girls. They actively, some of them reject girls that are making overtures because they think this is being bad. And the only way to be like a good guy is to not have casual sex. And I mean, I've never heard a man who's real glad that he did that. Most of them are like, why was I such a fucking idiot, that I like missed all these opportunities where I could have become more confident in my sexuality, and I could have really kind of embraced being a young guy. And I don't have those hormones anymore, and I don't get an erection every 3 seconds anymore. So what the hell was I doing? Why was I so hamstrung by these things that I had been taught that most people tend to get more flexible over time about various things that they're taught, like no premarital sex or whatever. People kind of start to see the shades of gray as they get older. And if you no longer believe those things, then you're like, what the hell? I mean, like, why did I stop myself from enjoying myself more at the time? Like, why didn't I go all the way with my high school girlfriend, or like whatever the case may be. So yeah, and even beyond this, like, there are many relationships that people don't have because of various rules and restrictions that they have, in their own head. Like girls who think that a guy is not serious enough to have a relationship with because, like, he doesn't have whatever job is considered, responsible and her parents would like or would approve of, or men that will only date a, quote, good girl, so she has to have less experience than him and have a certain mentality and whatever. But meanwhile, like some other girl that they're attracted to that they really click with, they don't pursue a relationship with that girl because they think that she would be considered an inappropriate, serious girlfriend by family or friends or whatever. So there's a lot of people that do these things. And then, usually they just end up thinking, why did I do that? I mean, knowing, of course, why they did it. I'm speaking rhetorically, but wishing that they had taken more chances. And I mean, this goes really for everything, like trips not taken, jobs not taken, friendships not explored, everything. I mean, regret is a big thing. I work with a lot of people in midlife, and I'll tell you, regret is a big theme. And if you're already a depressive kind of person, then regret can start to be this thing that you ruminate about. So try to get out ahead of that in any ways that you currently can. And now, what's a way that you could do it if you're already married? Well, I mean, you could try to work on your relationship instead of just shoving under the rug that y'all are, like, not connecting and in a sexless, like, pretty romanticless marriage, romanceless marriage. I mean, I've never had anybody say, I'm really glad that we didn't come in here 10 years ago. That would have really fucked us up to do all this productive work back before our problems metastasized like a cancer. I'm so glad we didn't come in 2003, the first time she said she wanted to leave me, and instead we're here in 2023. That really helped. No, fuck no. This is the exact opposite. Like, almost like weekly or something, honestly, somebody says something like, man, I wish that we would have gotten here 10 years ago. Man, I wish we would have gotten here 20 years ago. I mean, really. So, I mean, and that's not just because I'm awesome. That's because that is how people think. You know, if something is working, once you're trying on something, it's like that quote that I say every so often. When's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. Because that's the only time you have. This is the soonest time. Right now, when you think of it, is the soonest time that you can possibly do it. It's not 10 years out. That's the worst time. And so if you are in a marriage and it is in any way less than fulfilling, emotionally, physically, whatever, work on it now. You will never regret it. What you will regret is not working on it sooner. So you could do that today. This could be a wake-up call for you to do it today, to reach out and get into couples counseling, or to start talking in a different way, or to bring up things that you don't usually bring up, or put yourself out there romantically in a way that you usually don't, or try something new in bed or out of bed or anywhere, or anything. And this, of course, beyond the relationship, there's parenting. People have regrets that they just worked too hard and didn't pay enough attention to their kids, or that they didn't get their own mental issues like depression or anxiety treated when it could still impact their children's childhood. There are a million things. And if you're honest with yourself, you could probably think of like 3 things right now that you wish that if you were betting $1 million on if they would turn into regrets, you would know what they were right now. And so for a lot of people, these are, a lot of people I work with, they are not focusing on the marriage and or shoving marital problems under the rug. For some people, it's not separating or not divorcing, quite honestly, because they've already gone through loads and loads of couples counseling and there's like no connection, but they're scared to move forward. And a lot of people, there are parenting regrets too. And for single people, there are regrets about not taking risks and not putting yourself out there. If you are single, reach out to whoever you want to reach out to. So many times people reconnect with like old loves from an old time, like because they're both divorced again. But that would never happen if you didn't reach out and see. Yeah, I read, there's some funny meme about like, are you still married? Are you up of your 40s or something? Like meaning that when people are in their 20s or, they text, are you up? Meaning like at late night, if you're up, then you could come over and we could hook up. But like in the 40s, people post-divorce reach out to old, partners and say, are you still married, as a way to see if they are available for potentially hooking up or more. So anyway, just use this to think about, are you really grabbing life by the horns? Even if you never did before, could you now grab life by the horns and do things differently such that you end up with fewer regrets down the line? And that is really the upshot of it. And thank you for listening. I hope this was useful, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.